Civil media.
Dear all, dear excellencies, I will try, outside of that standard cliche for having a speech and addressing you as a representative from from a government institution, I would like to focus your attention to several issues and questions that you might raise and pose to us, which will of course help us in terms of overcoming many of raising dilemmas and questions that require answers. This is our Electoral Code, adopted in 2006, 30 times amended so far, and the initial text, the original text of the law was changed more than 30%, and in the normal standard and legislative procedures it is indicated that immediately we have to adopt the new electoral code because this is an unusable one. Unfortunately, this is a situation in our country, and we as SEC, as an authority which is to implement this legal text, we have to make sure that it is properly implemented, and we often face the impossibility of implementing a provision without causing any dissatisfaction with the party obliged to implement that provision as well. And this once again confirms our conclusion that amendments are urgently needed, that is, a new electoral code to be adopted. But currently we are in a pre-election period when this question is actually something that we should talk about after the elections, but we should not forget it, and therefore we as a commission will remind of it. We will be proactive in our role, and we will offer our proposals, all that with the objective for the authorized proposing entities, the Ministry of Justice, the MPs, and so on and so forth, to be able to adopt a good legal text which will help us in terms of overcoming the major dilemmas imposed with the unclarities and lack of details in the legal text. What I would like to say is the SEC has undertaken their standard obligations in this procedure resulting from the law, and we have adopted the relevant regulation establishing the activities for the electoral process, and we are abiding by meeting all timeframes and election processes, all that in order to have clean and good elections. And that would be the precondition for our EU and NATO accession. But what we are most to do in order for us to have clean and correct elections, it is necessary for all stakeholders included in this process to well understand their commitment in a proper way, so that at the end of the day, first of all on 21st and then on 5th of May, to be given an assessment that our elections were correct, objective, fair, and that will be positively assessed and will actually mean a pass for all of us in terms of reaching our objectives, and one of them is, of course, a date for accession negotiations for the EU. And we as a Commission will do our best to organize these elections the best way possible, all that in accordance with the law. Our international partners, who are always here and are helping us, are enabling us to make the positive leaps ahead, and also the great number of observers observing this process, both domestic and foreign, and journalists as well who are interested in this, who are also entitled by today to submit their application for accreditation, will be issued such accreditation, all that in order to enable the strength of monitoring for the process, resulting into positive assessment of the election process at the end. What we were able to do by analyzing the previous election cycles and the referendum, which our Commission, with the new composition, has conducted last summer, We were able to conclude that the major weakness in the election administration are actually our election boards, and in the future we should think about the method and composition of the election board as the lowest cell and unit in charge of conducting the elections. And therefore we have prepared a new training program for this election board, which will not be conducted 2 days before the elections, but a month and a half before the elections, with well-trained trainers who are actually training all members, presidents and deputy presidents of the election boards. And for the first time we have included trainers, people with certain disabilities as well, who are all able to explain better how the election is carried out when we have a voter with disability. As you see, for these elections, for the first time, will, after many years, conduct voting in 2 elderly homes. Those people never had the right to vote until now, and for the first time we will enable this, and we will see how things will move on, and we will enable these people to exercise their voting right. And if it turns out to be successful, we will continue with this practice. We are talking about 2,200 people who until now were deprived of their voting right. Regarding the people with disabilities, on the day of election, we are procuring a greater number of access ramps or devices that would enable those people who have to vote and whose access to the voting places with stairs, all that in order to enable them to exercise their voting right on the relevant election day by enabling them proper access to the election pool. Our objective was to enable as much citizens as possible to exercise their voting rights. One of the shortcomings for this election process is the voting for our people from the diaspora. For this election cycle, there will be costs about 30 million denars for somewhere near 2,000 voters who have registered and probably will not actually vote, or maybe they will vote, and this will be the most expensive vote in the election process. And this is a dilemma actually that we will have to think about. I'm not in favor of denying the voting rights, but this includes many obstacles. For example, it is sometimes difficult for some people from the diaspora to be located, and many of the people leaving the country are not reporting their leaving of the country to the relevant authorities, which also makes our job difficult. But what we can do is change the manner and the modality in terms of voting of those people, thus enabling them the relevant voting. Perhaps we could have electronic voting via mail, via post office, as the case is in the Republic of Slovenia. And also there could be situations, for example, places in which we have more concentration of the diaspora of our citizens, for the purposes of somehow reducing the relevant costs for those people and enabling them to exercise their voting rights. And this is one of the questions that we will have to resolve for the next elections. And unfortunately for this election, we will pay these votes very costly. What is also a novelty for the purposes of preventing potential irregularities occurring during elections in the previous occasions, which were also actually the comments from the civil society sector and the observers, refer to the fact that the SEC very late publishes the relevant results very late compared to the results published by the other participants in the election process. This is due to the fact that all those votes have to be taken from the relevant constituencies to the relevant position, which takes about an hour and a half, and then from that relevant place they have to be taken to the SEC, which takes 3 hours or more, and therefore we are very late with the results. And this is the election boards, the president and the deputy president this time will immediately just take a photo of the election minutes and will transmit it to the SEC, and upon receiving them, the SEC will immediately publish those results so that we would be more efficient and to inform the public as fast as possible. And in the past, while taking those votes from the constituency to the other place, things happened, for example, certain changes of the votes and so on and so forth, resulting into undesirable situations, and then the SSC would have to make the relevant and final decision in such cases. Therefore, we will, in this case, prevent this from happening, and we will be more transparent in terms of informing of the results. I would like to extend my significant gratitude to all of those who are helping us, both from the NGO sector, from the media, by publishing information and posts about our work, also including the criticism, which we accept because we cannot be ideal, and whenever we think that we have made a mistake, I'm ready to apologize, because there are no ideal situations in which people do not make mistakes. It is much more difficult for the politicians to apologize. It is not that difficult for me, because I think that this is the proper way to do it, and I think that we should proceed with our joint cooperation so as to enable the realization of a good, clean and correct election process. I have also visited the election commissions in Debar and Ohrid, and I can conclude that the volume of work of those commissions is a bit increased, because we have 2 types of elections there, also the mayor's elections, but people are ready to do it. We have good working environment there, and of course we will provide them assistance and help in this manner. They are also facing some problems because of the relevant legal gaps, and without having adopted any new legal amendments, it will be very difficult to produce such an impact. I can say that in all 3 municipalities, in the municipality in Novoselo, things are going in the right direction with some minor incidents. While discussing with the citizens of these places and with the relevant election commissions, I believe that we will have a good outcome in the first round of the campaign. And what will happen in the second round, it is yet to be seen, and it will largely depend from the result from the first round. But we, as SEC, will further work and will do our best to enable a very clean, correct and objective election process.
Civil Media